Hi, I'm Dr. Canney and I'm here with Dylan Nunn in my garden on the outskirts of Nairobi. I'm a research associate at the University of Johannesburg in the Department of Botany because I'm crazy and passionate about medicinal plants. So over the years I've tried to plant as many as I can and keep as many as I can in my garden. This we'll start with is Wolbergia ugandensis. Hey, sorry about the crumbling. So we'll start with Wolbergia ugandensis. This is a highly medicinal tree. It's known locally as Mukum. So it's known locally as Muthaga in Kikuyu, and it's very interesting because then a whole section of Nairobi was named after it. And it's very full of berberine, and so it has very strong antiviral properties. A very special tree. If you ever pick a leaf and want to make tea, you don't boil it. It's very, very peppery and very strong and very medicinal. It's being stripped for its bark, and so I'm very glad that I planted this about 25 years ago, and it's grown well and is a very precious tree for us, and we're collecting the seeds and propagating them. So now we're going to move on, and we have a driveway, and I've just allowed things to grow. You'll find that in my garden we just allow things to grow. And so the jasmine and the climbing rose and the Indian vine has grown here. And this vine, you'll find that the sunbirds love it here because this fills with water and they come and drink from here. We're very blessed to have many of these beautiful birds of paradise. And this aloe is again very good for burns. It's just a local aloe that grows. Here we have some Western medicinal plants in terms of yarrow. And those are the birds of paradise. And then we have yarrow, the lavender, the bees love the Elysium, and feverfew. But I want to take you around. We'll go this way, because there's one or two things in this part that are really, the chameleons love this part. This is a loquat tree, they've planted themselves. The birds help us planting many of our indigenous trees. This beautiful arch that you see, this is Mondiai whitei. The local name is Mukumbelo, and when folks come by they giggle because they know it's a known aphrodisiac for men. And I'm going to have Dylan just smell the root, which has this incredibly complex, beautiful vanilla smell. So again, it's one of those things that is being...
It smells like a tea.
Like a tea, and when you put it in a pot, you get that very strong, smoky, vanilla-y smell. So this is grown for the roots. It comes really from Western Kenya. So often people are surprised at how successfully it's grown. It flowered not long ago. And I'm really protecting it because, again, it's being more increasingly uprooted and its roots are being taken for its medicinal properties. You can buy dried pieces of it on the roadside in Nairobi. And so it needs protection. It needs to be propagated. So we're experimenting here to see how it goes.
It smells very familiar.
It's a very comforting smell, isn't it? Very warm, very comforting. This area, we've been away for a while, so I'm going to regenerate it. It's really for the bees. The big bumblebees love this purple flower. And this is the butterfly plant. And it's just an area where there used to be a huge fig tree, but its roots, after 20 years, were going all through the house. So I just want to plant this with succulents and irises. There's a gladioli from Mount Kenya that, again, the birds must have brought in some form or other that has germinated itself. And here we have a magic plant, one of the plectranthruses, that is incredibly good for skin. So making skin cream out of that will heal a lot of skin complaints. Otherwise, I just let nature take its course.
This one again?
I think it's a plectranthus, but we'd have to look it up and check. But my friend Debbie Coulson, who's really good on medicinal plants, calls it the magical skin plant. This is one of the many ocimums, probably Ocimum gratissimum, and they seed themselves, and they're a type of basil. This is local and indigenous, and I have distilled oil from that. This is the mimosa. Dylan, you can just stroke a leaf here. Little mushrooms, that'll be the termites harvesting the mushrooms. Stroke a leaf. This is called sensitive plant. Because it says, you just touched me. These are plantains. This is a tree, I don't know what it is. The birds must have brought it. Plantain is there, yes. And a few dandelions. Again, this needs sorting out. It's been left, and sadly, some of the precious marjorams, etc., have passed away. But I want to bring you to this tree, which was given to me by the Botanical Gardens International, and it's called Psychopsychiatric crassipetala, and they write about it that I am native to Kenya and Tanzania. I'm endangered because my habitat is being cleared for agriculture. Please take care of me in your gardens. And please email africa@bgci.org if you have any questions of how to care for me. It liked the shade, so it's going up slowly, but it seems to be quite happy. So this is, again, just planting an endangered plant that is indigenous to Kenya. This behind you, there are no flowers out, but it's like an indigenous hibiscus, and it has flowers like a Chinese lantern that hang down. Very, very beautiful. And that is a particular favorite of the chameleons. Often if I'm just tidying it up a bit, I'll find a, usually thankfully quite pregnant chameleon. This is just using actually these leaves just as a mulch to keep the soil in, because we're getting very uncertain weather patterns these days. So just trying to keep the indigenous plants going. I've just cleared this area because it got completely overgrown, but this particular loquat is apparently a very good type of loquat, better than the other, and this is a very old tree. So as soon as those are ready, I'm going to harvest them and do my best to propagate more of this particular loquat tree. We often have monkeys here every day, and they come to eat the guavas, the loquats, and the berries. We have mulberries. It's surprising, I think, what's fascinating is the range of plants that can grow. And this is Bativa Grass, which is excellent, has a very wide root system and can really protect riverbanks and hills. But again, although we're not doing that, you can dig it up for the base note. It is distilled in India a lot as a base note for perfume. Here is our kind of mini coffee. What I've discovered is there's a beautiful aroma to coffee flowers, and the bees love them. So we get a little bit of organic coffee every year. And we're very grateful for that. This is a giant podo, which came from Mount Elgon. It was given to my partner. And this is the favorite tree of Wangari Maathai. Behind it is Newtonia. I don't think it's Buchanii. I found out later there's two species of Newtonia, which is an indigenous river tree. And one spreads like this one, and the other goes straight up. So I think it's not the Buchanii, it's the other. Here we've got an indigenous St. John's wort at the back. Nothing's in flower in this cold season, but that has yellow flowers, and there's the tall one, and it's an indigenous type of St. John's wort. Here you've got two of the artemisinins that, as you may know, was used, one of them was used very much, Afra, was used very much for anti-malarial when chloroquine started to no longer be effective. This is a non-indigenous tree just flowering, but it's a lipstick tree, Akaoti. But this purple plant is indigenous, and the bees absolutely love it. The bees, the butterflies, and often there's a little, like a bee, it looks like a hummingbird bee that's often just darting from flower to flower. It's very, very pretty. And this other red one, I don't know the name, but again, it's an indigenous that the bumblebees very much like. And I think this is, the other one's called a Protea, the one, the bell-like, and again, I plant it for the bees because we do have bees. This was a very rare Maasai, and I'm going to forget the name, but this is a slow-growing Maasai from the Masai Mara. Again, because it's grazed in the Masai Mara, it's a bit threatened, so I've planted it here. It's very slowly doing its thing. We have a fish pond with some, that the herons and the hammerkops come and they enjoy. And again, just picking out some local, the blue lily is indigenous, water lily is indigenous to Kenya, and just letting, in a sense, nature see what nature brings. These different bromeliads and cycads have gone very well and grown. And this is an indigenous Dracaena, is that right? That apparently is a subspecies for this particular valley. And so when a friend moved out of her house just down, I took a cutting and it's really gone. So apparently this is very particular to this particular valley, according to her. So I wanted to maintain it. Here you see again the, this I need to regenerate. I've left it for a while. You see more Bativa Grass and the indigenous St. John's wort. And the sages that do well, lavenders, but again, this all needs tidying up. And sadly, because of the long drought, all the kaffirs that we had have actually died and need replenishing, because we had 3 years of drought. Different valerians, and this is a self-planted macadamia tree. But I planted this, and this is mundarendu. This is a local forest tree, Vespis tricordia, that the Kikuyu elders, they make their walking sticks out of, because some of these branches will go long and straight. And this is the birds. They've actually given me about 4 or 5 of these trees throughout the property. And we should actually just look behind, because again, this is our local butterfly plant. Sorry, brain's gone. But this Prunus Africanus, this is an indigenous albizia. But this Prunus Africanus was planted by the birds, and it found our old previous, this is albizia, and then this is the Prunus Africanus. And this is being stripped for its bark. It's actually listed as Appendix 2 by the Convention for International Trade of Endangered Species, because the bark, you can make even a syrup. They were using it for medicine for prostate cancer and keeping prostate health in men. And so it was over-harvested. But as you can see, the birds planted this, and again, I've got 3 or 4 in the garden that just go up. So it grows very easily and could replenish very easily. But unfortunately, it was over-harvested for its incredibly useful medicinal properties. These are wonderful air plants and beautiful orchids that, again, people have either given or the birds have brought or have appeared on the trees. This osmia also has strong, you have to be a bit careful with it, but it has strong anti-cancer. If you mix it with reishi mushrooms and this and one other, reishi mushrooms also grow locally. It's reported to have strong, alleged to have strong anti-cancer properties. It's regarded for that. But I'm not sure that clinical trials have been carried out on all of these. This is a guava tree that we've planted. We're going to go now into the vegetable patch. That is, again, just needs a lot of refurbishment after 3 years of drought. But I'd love to introduce you to what I call our tree of grace, which is this beautiful avocado tree that is the centerpiece of the vegetable patch. It's probably about 70, 80 years old and produces the most wonderful avocados.
Absolutely gigantic.
We've cut it back a lot because it was covering the whole of the greenhouse and almost all of our vegetable garden, but tried to maintain its integrity at the same time. And we're so grateful for this, that we have a permanent supply of wonderful, tasty, good avocados.
Pretty much all year?
Pretty much all year. If you get the temperature right, you can see here this is our vanilla. It started off as a tiny cutting from Diani Beach at the coast many years ago. And one thing I learned about vanilla is it needs to go up and down to flower. So we need to make a few more kind of trellises for it to start to go up and down. And then you have to hand pollinate it because the bee that pollinates it is local to South America. These are different mints and different herbs in here and cactuses and medicinal plants. It's a lovely smell of mint coming from touching that. And over the other side is my older son's long-standing collection of air plants and orchids and things that hang. And I want to introduce you here to Ashwagandha, which is very well known in the Indian Ayurvedic tradition. And you use the roots as what they call an adaptogen, that it really balances your immune system and your hormonal state. So apparently we will start to, it's the roots that you need to dig up and dry and grind, but this is indigenous to Kenya. So what's so interesting is that quite a few of the Ayurvedic plants are also indigenous to Kenya. Behind it is a Commiphora africana that I brought from the drylands, from our dryland farm. It's not really the base, it's local habitat, but I just wanted to have one. And if it does produce gum, people chew that and say that it's good for your gut and your intestines. This is Kegelia, either Kegelia Musa or Africana. I thought it was Africana, but it makes these huge, it's called a sausage tree for obvious reasons. Again, it's a coastal tree, so we're very lucky that it's actually done that. I actually the Kikuyus use these for fermenting beer. I actually dry them and grind them up and use it as a scrub in a sort of homemade skin cream. We're trying some different avocados. These are English nettles, but Dylan, I strongly recommend you don't touch this nettle, which is a Maasai nettle. Very, very powerful. And if you even just brush it, you'll get these big brown welts on your skin. This is Elgantic that's going up. So we've got 3 of those. This is a new one going up. This was an elderflower, but we're challenged. We tried to make elderflower champagne or cordial, but it didn't actually taste very strong, and it really didn't like the drought. It doesn't like the hot, dry weather. This is a Meru Oak tree. This is the English nettle. Yes. Yes. That's universal and very good to take the top off and.
This is that other nettle that she's talking about.
But don't brush don't brush that one. It's very powerful. This is a Meru Oak tree, again planted because they're much sought after for their wood, and so hopefully, yep, compost goes, and we're very lucky that we don't really have to do much. Because of the temperature and the heat, we add cow manure. We layer it with cow manure from the farm, and it's done in about 3 months. We don't have to wait long. This is a Prunus Africanus from Mount Elgon that was given when my partner went on a walk there. and apparently it has much stronger even medicinal properties to the other prunus that is self being planted by the birds in the garden. So we won't be harvesting this for any bark. These trees are just for that they have a safe place. This is a white oak, Brestigia, that again is being cut down a lot in Kenya because its wood is very sought after for carving. So again, this is here to grow, to be happy, to live, I hope, a long, healthy, happy tree life. Behind it is an East African olive, which I always find such an interesting tree because the Samburu take the bark and smoke their calabashes with the bark, and reportedly that allows them to run for 2 days, 3 days with the milk without it going off. It seems to have strong antibacterial properties. That's one of the original Elgantics behind that I planted, that, as you can see, is very happy. So I've since planted 2 more. And there's a chayote that's become quite a known vegetable here. And it grows very, very easily. And what's surprising about it is the root will come out of the bulbous end within about 2 weeks. It's a very aggressive vine, and I think you can probably pick that one, Dylan. That one's ready. It tastes a bit like it doesn't have a lot of flavor, but I think as a dryland vegetable and sort of I think it has potential it's a little bit prickly, but it tastes a bit like a very delicate apple, or a cross between an apple and a pear.
Of that very quickly and easily.
Yes. This is a Mexican apple that we actually cut back completely because the monkeys, it wasn't that happy, and the monkeys always get to them before me, and it was taking up a lot of space, but it's decided to revive itself. So thank you, David, we've decided that the celery might be burning because of the colder nights, and so we're trying to just turn this into a little bit of a greenhouse. These are yellow chilies, and this very interesting, if you go down you can see the red berries. I'm not sure what it is, but I had a friend who came who said that she used to pick it in her grandmother's house when she was young. So whether it's some kind of indigenous cross between a strawberry and a raspberry, it's obviously very happy. It more or less planted itself, and I've left it, and they're delicious berries. So very happy to have those. At the back there you'll see we've made an arrowroot swimming pool. It is a lined pool for water, and so it collects the water. There's one piece of remaining sugarcane, but we do get good arrowroot from this. You'll see this in all the sort of riverbeds across Kenya that people grow. It's a very nutritious staple, and it makes wonderful crisp because it's dotted through with purple anthocyanins. So it makes very pretty white crisp with purple dots all over it, which I always thought could be upscaled and sold in posh places, in places like London, as fancy crisps. They are delicious, done well. So these are different kales and different... we're just resettling the garden after the long drought and the very cold spell. There's areas of the garden that we also need to clear. Here, this coffea for the bees has done a little bit better. These are purple sweet potatoes. This is a fig tree. The monkeys, I need to prune it back because the monkeys and the birds, however much I try to protect them, get the figs. This is chia, which again will seed itself, but the bees love the little purple flowers. So we harvest chia and amaranth. This is terere, and we grow managu. And these are the purple sweet potato vines that probably do better elsewhere than in Nairobi. These are the different calliandras. This is a calliandra. It's not indigenous, but I'm afraid I have a soft spot for these beautiful fluffy flowers. The hedge is pink with white, pink and white, and this red one, I actually picked the seed from the village market probably about 30 years ago, 25 years ago, and it's just slowly going up. A yellow Nandi flame, and then I've never quite known what that tree is behind, but it is a medicinal one, another prunus that planted itself, and a cedar tree that was given to my son when he was about 25 years ago that's gone up. This is lemon verbena. This is an indigenous Shimba Hills gardenia. Do I need gardenia? I think so. With long white trumpet flowers. Smells wonderful. Given by a beautiful lady who used to live at the coast to my oldest son. And this is turmeric, haldi, which has the most exquisite flower. And that does well here. This is lemon verbena that makes a wonderful after dinner tea with the bananas down that side. These are dragon fruit going up in this warmer greenhouse, some tomatoes, different types of ginger, and the original aloe vera. So this is very, very good for burns. And you can just see the remnants of, didn't quite grow up properly, but the remnants of a turmeric flower. When they grow and they're new and they're just translucent and so geometric, they're very, very beautiful. These are some lychees that we're trying from seed. They don't seem to like it. We haven't figured out what. And these are baby boswellias, baby frankincense trees that are minding their own business for a long time that came from northern Kenya and some of the coniferas. Behind we have the pumpkin going happily, some indigenous trees that a friend brought from Wingi, and 3 functional beehives that give us the most amazing, wonderful black honey. And the wonderful Moringa tree. This is highly nutritious. It has protein in it, and you'll find it's now a superfood. People grow it now and take the leaves and grind them up to make a superfruit. Sorry. To make a superfood, you'll find moringa powder is in all the health food shops. Oh, yeah. But what's astonishing about it, again, if you grind up the leaves and you put it in dirty water, it flocculates the water and makes it clean again. And it has a long seed pod that in the Indian culinary tradition, they're called drumsticks, and it has a gelatinous inside, and you chop them up and put them into a certain kind of curry called mutwa, and you suck it out, and it's reportedly very, very good for your intestines and your digestion, and very soothing, very healing. This is Ficus religiosa, the peepal tree, under which Buddha became enlightened. We've actually had to cut it back a bit because, as you probably know, banyan trees it's not a banyan tree but a peepal tree, but it'll become enormous. But it's also the name of our company, so it's been very precious and close to my heart and beautiful to have one. And it's really nice to take these leaves, you soak them, you brush out the green, you're left with the skeleton, and that makes something beautiful to paint on and make cards for people. The other Elgantic going up there, and another white oak. Unfortunately, the termites, we sort of battle quite a lot with termites with the trees and monkeys for all the fruits. And this is another East African olive that sadly is a bit too close to the Elgantic, so it's grown curved, but it is gently minding its own business.
What forest garden?
It needs a little bit more thoughtful thinking. Kegelia grows really well up, which I love, the bitter cucumber up the sides here. It needs more thinking through and a little bit more management. One thing I learned is that wild gardens actually need to be managed as well. So if you leave a garden to manage itself, it won't end up well in terms of something will take over, become dominant, or things don't necessarily flourish, especially with increasingly uncertain weather patterns that we're definitely experiencing here. So that's the main part of the garden. And it's been lovely to walk around with you. And let's These are the beautiful calliandras. We have a red one, a white one, and this hedgerow of pink when it pink and white.
Sharing Sue, and you can see she's got water catchment in areas of the water and catchment in many different areas of the property, and all these different little areas and paths. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your beautiful.
This is a loquat tree and a mango tree, and the myth of the mango tree is that you put a rusty nail in. So we put a rusty nail, and I actually found an unripe mango that the monkeys had got to first. And our challenge always with fruit trees is that the monkeys are going to get there first. This is a Zygium guianensis that is from the, again from Mount Elgon, that is indigenous and gone up well. And this tree, Erythrina, I'll remember, Abyssinica, it actually planted itself as a seed in a pot outside my kitchen 20-something years ago. And that's a very indigenous tree. And then there's an Erythrina bertii going up just behind the from Bissell that's going up behind. So 2 Erythrinas. Again, just to keep them, to have a variety of indigenous trees. Because one of the things I noticed is that we had this Ficus benjamina here with its destructive, it was huge, it was like 70 feet high, and I absolutely loved it, and it was a home to all the birds and the monkeys, and it took up this whole space. Nevertheless, its root system was going across probably 100 feet to the neighbors, under the house, even more than 100 feet through the house, cracking all the septic tanks, and I tried to contain it and cut it, and it just kept breaking through and blocking everything and cracking the house. So eventually I said, I'm really sorry, I have to cut it down and do something else. That's another Prunus Africanus going up. This is, but what was interesting is when we cut it down, not one leaf had been eaten, and all the little seeds that came off had not been eaten. Whereas this is an indigenous tree, I don't know what it is, with these little berries that plants itself. This is the second one next to its mother tree. And the birds come and eat it. And like the prunus, sometimes in some seasons will be so eaten by caterpillars that they'll just be left with lace leaves. So I really do believe that encouraging people to implant indigenous trees really supports the birds, the insects that eat the insects, the whole cycle of life, and the biodiversity. And it just brings pleasure to know that these trees are feeling at home, they're feeling safe, and they have a safe place to grow. So if there was any message, 2 things: plant for the bees, they really need our support and help, and plant indigenous flowers and that they really love and can use, and plant indigenous trees just to support all the wildlife that otherwise is getting. We see the monkeys come more and more often. They've been eating. We had to, as you saw, put up the chain link fences because they used to come and just take one piece of maize. Then they started to take all the maize. Then they started to take all the maize and the peas. Then they started to take everything else. And then so it's like it must be that where they used to live along the riverbanks have all been developed into houses. People are cutting down a lot of trees. And yet Nairobi is really beautiful for its trees. It has spectacular trees. And so, they're obviously coming to places like this where they find what they need. But it's a challenge then that so many come and they take so much. Yeah. So if people could spread the load by planting more, this would really help us. So thank you, Dylan. It's been a pleasure to walk around the garden with you.
Where can people follow your work, or kind of if they want to connect with you?
I'm a long way from, this is I'm really an amateur researcher, and I don't really do any research in Kenya, and just try to encourage people really and to take interest, to learn, and maybe it'll develop into something more. But certainly creating a network of people planting. There is increasingly a network of physic gardens, of medicinal gardens, with Suraj in the Maasai Botanical Gardens. If you ever go down to the Maasai Mara, 11 kilometers short of Sekanani Gate, is the Maasai Botanical Gardens. Suraj is doing extraordinary things down there. Debbie Coulson in Karen has made a beautiful small version of the Visit Garden in the National Museums of Kenya that I think you saw yesterday. And she has a larger version at home with 150 medicinal plants, indigenous medicinal plants that the elders have come and shared what they use them for, and other medicinal plants. So, and Norbert Rocher at the coast is an amateur just collecting all the indigenous trees, extraordinary collection. The Ma Trust down in Brackenhurst, of course. So there are people beginning and more interest, and I think more and more awareness that these are the trees that are most likely to survive climate change. They're most likely to survive long periods of drought because they've been used to variable weathers. So, I just encourage people to get interested, to look. There's lots of beautiful books, and to follow it.
Plants are people. Thank you so much, Sue. Can we get a quick photo? All of her work, and check out her book as well, the Teens book.
Oh, that was a long time ago.
A whole different chapter of your life.
Yes.
But,
I come from at least trying to get people to talk to each other, whatever their differences and however diverse they are. Can they work together? So let's work together.
Let's work together and let's
to really regenerate and regenerate and reforest how it wants to be. And I always encourage everyone who comes to help me in the garden, just watch and see what the plants are trying to tell you.
Observe.
Just observe, because unfortunately they can't speak and say, I need this, I need that. But we do our best to interpret their messages and listen to them and help them.
Again, thank you so much for sharing your time and your space with us, Sue, and we'll see you on the other side.
Thank you.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification for